Good morning, all. Just a couple of quick announcements before I introduce Mr. LaBrie. We are doing everything we can to get the fields playable, not just for today, but also Saturday. There will be a crew and a whole bunch of shovels up at the football field at 12:30. If you are free and you can pitch in and help out, that would be much appreciated. So hope you can. If we get that done and you see a note from Mr. Hinman or someone saying we're now moving on to the next field, the girls' soccer field, then you can pitch in there. Please help out. We're just doing everything we can to make it work. As you know, there's an abbreviated schedule in terms of athletic contests. There are a number of schools we're playing are simply not in session yet, and we don't have all the fields. But there are games today, so please come out and support. Girls' field hockey is on turf at 2:30. Followed immediately afterwards by the boys' soccer. So big games, come out and support them if you would. So now it is. It's always a real privilege when I am able to introduce faculty members, as I did, for instance, when Mr. Saltzman spoke to you about environmental issues at the school. And so I probably don't even need to introduce Mr. LaBrie to many of you. If you saw the play, you obviously saw him in action there. If you live in HDT, you may well know him, and some of you are lucky enough to have him mid-English. But Mr. LaBrie grew up in a small town in New Hampshire. He graduated from the top of his class in high school there. He went on to William and Mary, where he wrote a distinguished career. He was a 4-year varsity letterman in crew and was also the captain of the program. I remember meeting him, and I looked at my notes from meeting him, and I wrote down a bit of a Renaissance man. This is a man of a lot of talents, not only a distinguished athlete, but he also has, as you could see from the production over the weekend, he's trained in dance, also in water polo. When he graduated from William and Mary, he was named a Monroe Scholar, which means one of the top scholars in the class. He has taught at the St. Paul's Summer School, and he also has a keen interest in government as well as English. He was a bi major both in government and in English. He has interned at Governor John Lynch's office in New Hampshire and also Senator Jeanne Shaheen. So he has already written a remarkable career both as in college and also afterwards. We're lucky to have him, so I welcome and introduce Mr. Matt LaBrie.
When someone finds out that you row, he asks you to pull a 2K. When someone finds out you can dance, they ask for a little demonstration. As soon as someone finds out that you're an English teacher, he starts to ask for examples of your own writing. So that is what I'm going to do today, though I do have another reason for this presentation. Taft talks a lot about community, about family. Well, this is something that should be shared with family. "Ah, DC, fun. What are you doing there?" asked the girl with blonde hair whom I occasionally chatted with before class on Wednesday mornings. "I'm going to visit," I stumbled. Then paused. "Friend?" I wondered. "Dear friend?" He says that a lot. "Lover?" Well, that's laughable. Is there a gender-neutral way to say significant other without saying significant other? "A close friend." My mouth ended my silent struggle without consent. Then it smiled and continued in polite conversation. Inwardly, I sighed in resignation and, not for the first time, and probably not for the last, offered my close friend a silent apology. The question posed was easy enough, and I knew the answer. I was going to visit Cole, the boy with whom I had been in and out of like and love with for the past year and a half. But, like an expletive might, the correct word for Cole caught in my throat. Or did I catch my words? Why was Cole simply my close friend to the blonde girl? It's not because I harbor a deeply buried shame which pervades our relationship. Cole is not a secret indulgence. In fact, a part of me was glad blonde girl had asked about my weekend. I wanted to talk about Cole, wanted to share my happiness, share my excitement. I wanted to brag. There was no way she could be as content as we were. But that part faltered. Blonde girl had never been anything but cordial and kind, Yet, standing there in her pink cardigan and ponytail, she scared me. I had no way of knowing how she would react had I said boyfriend. I wish I could say my reservations were irrational. Perhaps, in this case, they were. But with those matters which society, or at least extremely vocal segments of it, deems taboo, I must be discerning. Never discuss religion or politics at a dinner party, or sexual orientation, if you are not straight. Too many people declare too strong a hatred for homosexuality to risk speaking candidly to a stranger. If Blonde Girl were to ask me directly, I would not pretend to be someone I'm not. I don't hide it, I just don't shout about it. Perhaps I've instituted my own don't ask, don't tell policy. But it is not out of embarrassment. I dress, speak, act, move, and think as I wish, regardless of whether it comports with society's stereotypes. Sexual orientation does not define me any more than does the fact that I'm right-handed or that I take my coffee with 1 cream and 2 sugars. Well, Splendas. I graduated summa cum laude from William & Mary. I'm over 6 feet tall and an all-American athlete. I am not easily intimidated. Yet, somehow, don't ask, don't tell still applies to my everyday life. Soldiers and sailors can now be openly gay. Ellen, or Kurt from Glee, can shout gay and reinforce whatever stereotypes they want. But when I walk down a city street, I am to be discreet. The public wants us politely and quietly out of the closet. Except for a once-a-year recess during Pride, don't ask, don't tell has become an expected form of etiquette, a code. The public wants well-behaved, respectable house gays. Much in the same way women used to be in a delicate condition or eating for 2, the average American is comfortable with only so much sexual openness. It's generally not the feelings of love between 2 members of the same sex that people object to. It's the act of love. If I were to introduce a girlfriend to acquaintance, very few, aside from perhaps the hormone-raging teen, would immediately think about our relationship's more intimate details. But switch out the girl for a boy, and I go from discussing my relationship to bashing someone over the head with my sex life. As being openly gay is still novel, outward manifestations of homosexuality necessarily confront the public with distinctions less palatable and more uncomforting. No one goes around engaging others in discussion about their sex life. Expecting subtlety from gays diminishes the danger of being told about someone else's. If Blonde Girl had squealed in disgust or turned her back, putting an end to our Wednesday morning tete-a-tetes, my life wouldn't change in any noticeable way. But I would be disappointed, for intolerant chagrins and hate hurts. I've been fortunate enough to have hardly ever been hated. I was raised in a community that was, if not embracing, tolerant. Or perhaps I've been adequately judicial in my confidences. My parents were the first people from my small New Hampshire hometown that I confided in. Shaking, almost incoherent from my quaking voice and tears, I confided in my parents after more than a year away at college, guilty that I had not been forthright with them sooner. In that one act, I believed myself to be risking 20 years of a love and compassion I could never have done enough to earn. Though I knew, somewhere, behind the terror and beneath the fear, that such love had no qualifications. And it was true. They harbored none. They assured me all they wanted was for me to be happy. A hug has never been as warm as it was that cold November afternoon. Yet, I have never discussed any relationship with my parents. I write off this awkward fact on the formality of the New England filial rapport, but this is an excuse. I have not introduced any dates to my parents because I want my relationship to be perfect before I do. By that, I want it to be about love and romance, not about sex. I want to show my parents, and I suppose, by extension, the world, that he and I never fight, never disagree, that we are completely enamored with each other. But not only have I never been in such a relationship, I know no one who has. My relationships are no different than any others. We have the same problems, same emotions, just he and I can mix and match our entire wardrobes. Yet, I remain reserved, not because I'm ashamed, but because I want to prove I am truly happy. I want to help my parents be comfortable accepting what much of society claims to hate. I suppose I consider such a perfection would ameliorate the fear of the unacceptable. It seems that one can criticize less a perfect relationship, even one which society condemns. But never mind perfect, how can a relationship even be functional in the face of such hatred and disapproval? Perhaps it requires a greater sense of devotion. It certainly requires greater effort. How do you feel about PDA? Cole asked me as we started our walk to the movies. What do you mean? We had packed an ample supply of illicit snacks and drinks, which I was carrying in a black satchel hanging off my left shoulder. PDA, public displays of affection, like, would you hold your boyfriend's hand in the street? At the word boyfriend, my pulse started. He had never used such a label before. Assuming we wouldn't get bashed, yeah. He laughed in a paternal manner and assured me, you're in Northwest DC, it can't get much safer, and I grasped his hand. It was a small act, perhaps an inconsequential one to many, yet, to us, it let us revel in our fondness and defy omnipresent hatred and society's rules of etiquette as acutely as Shakespeare's star-crossed lovers. Hate is easier to ignore when holding hands. We continued walking towards the theater, but as we crossed the bridge leading out of Northwest, he slipped his hand out of mine. I hoped he was scared, and that made me guilty. Hope should be positive, uplifting, empowering, not qualifying. But the only other explanation was he actually didn't want to hold my hand, and that thought was far worse. But I understood. He was not repulsed or ashamed. He was scared of the hate of unknown people. People we would likely never meet forced the wedge between our fingers. I said nothing and pulled the strap of my satchel over my head so it stretched across my chest. It's less effective as a weapon this way, but at least it doesn't look like a purse. Any potential laugh was lost in frank reality. He had let go of my hand for the same reason that we chose an early movie, so we could climb the stairs of an almost empty theater, moving to the back seat so we could hold hands, or maybe even rest our heads together. We could see the couples in front of us nuzzling each other, the guy's arm around the girl, but no one could see us. Those up front couldn't care less if someone saw them engaged in PDA. Granted, they might get pelted with a few kernels of popcorn or suffer the admonishing glare of a mom with small children. I could deal with thrown popcorn. Abhorrent slurs, not so much. It's hard to enjoy a date when you feel targeted with baseless reproach. Instead, it's easier to decide that the best vantage point of any theater is the back row. The sun was setting behind the Potomac as we left the theater and walked along the waterfront. Couples littered the boardwalk, taking advantage of the romantic setting to indulge in their passions. I grabbed the strap of my bag and fiddled with the change in my pocket as we walked back. Why would I ever want to be so crude as to kiss my date on a dock in the setting sun? A couple passed us holding hands while I counted again the 49 cents in my pocket. It was much more difficult to pretend I did not want to hold hands than to pretend I did not want to kiss on the dock. Oh, that I were a glove upon Cole's hand. But it was night, and even in Northwest, the night is dangerous, and stories of hate crimes infamous. There are fewer shops to duck into should the need arise. The dark windows of passing cars hid potential threats. I understood. No one accosted me, but I was hurt just the same. I was angry. I was jealous. I was in Washington, D.C., the capital of the free world. Across the river stood a monument to Thomas Jefferson, who authored the iconic words that founded our nation, that all men are created equal. Just blocks away, an imperious Lincoln sat upon his throne, his call for unity emblazoned on his stone temple for everyone to see. It was from this spot that Martin Luther King Jr. declared he had a dream that men could at last be judged by the content of their character. If anywhere, here in D.C., all of America is encouraged to pursue liberty and happiness. Less democratic societies than ours have proven themselves accepting. Yet, though I walk but yards from the very same places these men espouse their lofty ideas, I am somehow disqualified. Rather than adding to the compassion in the world, my hand hung listless and cold, the victim of mercurial society. Here in fair Verona, the mere existence of hate and intolerance directs the scene. But the confines of Cole's apartment gave us reprieve from society's destructive hate. As we sat on his balcony that night, planes streaked the sky, somehow cradling the moon, yet barely clearing the tops of buildings. Isn't it amazing what our species has done, Cole softly mused, the glow of the city reflecting in his eyes? I squeezed his hand reassuringly. Isn't it amazing how it has failed? I thought to myself, how far we have to go. There is no questioning the fact that no other species has come close to achieving what we humans have. Our race has developed the capacity to influence everything from the universe to the virus. But in the pursuit of solutions to the problems that plague all species, we have developed problems unique to our own. I sat there remembering how I used to be scared of the night and of the monsters under my bed, sad that the monsters were still there. I mourned that our society had at once evolved and devolved as to give a son cause to wonder if his parents' love is conditional, dependent on circumstance independent of his control. It seems we are stuck in a catch-22. To be polite, to conform to the expectations of society's don't ask, don't tell, and to lead lives free from bigoted intrusion, we sacrifice the hand-holding, the quick pecks on the cheek, the nuzzling, all the things inherent in the normal relationship. By doing so, we enter into a contract of sorts. You accept us if we remain discreet. Yet, this compromise serves as both a shield and an impediment. It protects from the vitriol, but prevents true assimilation and inclusion. It prevents true happiness. It allows and indeed encourages a second class. And, however it may be shielded by compromise, it fosters intolerance and hate. Perhaps while I'm focused on advancing the technology of society, we have lost its morality, for our society is intolerant. In it exists a capacity to hate, and to hate in an unnatural way. Unlike our ancestors long past were forced to, we do not destroy out of self-preservation. We hate out of arrogance. We hate selfishly, rendering the lives of 6 gay teenage boys so unbearable that each commits suicides within a few weeks of each other does not strengthen or preserve anyone. Rather, it weakens everyone. Denying the same freedoms to homosexual couples does not strengthen the rights of others. It weakens them. While I may loathe my professor and despise his lack of sympathy and understanding for scheduling a test late in the afternoon on Friday, I do not hate him. Reason and conscience prevent such an intense feeling. I will whine, I will complain, I will pout. That's it. My displeasure only extends so far. Similarly, I don't hate those segments of society that prevent me from holding hands in public. Nor do I think most of them hate me. Hate precludes understanding. It knows no bounds. It necessitates destruction. The boys who tortured Matthew Shepard and left him to die hate him and his homosexuality. There would and could be no reconciliation between the two, for a threshold was crossed. By taking action, Matthew Shepard's attackers passed from latent abhorrence to hatred, from which there is no return, no chance at compromise. The manifestation of hate dehumanized the boys, and as a result, they beat Matthew to the point where the only visible part of his face were 2 blood-free tear streaks. All Matthew wanted to do was hold someone's hand, but hate does not understand. It eradicates. The boys who murdered Matthew did not see his humanness, did not see how much like them he was. They couldn't have. Such violence precludes empathy. They lived with the rules of etiquette that demanded homosexuals remain discreet. Thus, they had never witnessed romance between members of the same sex. Behind the shield of don't ask, don't tell, they created an abstract and ultimately inhuman gay in their minds, one that they came to hate, an abstraction they attempted to attack when they dragged Matthew into their truck. This hate is rare, but is the ugly stepchild of the studied indifference created by society's code of etiquette, and sibling to the easy apathy Cole and I encounter in the center of my college quad, lying on the grass, Cole's head steadily rising and falling on my chest. In the shadow of a beech tree, we seek protection only from the sun. The dark lens of passerby's sunglasses hide only commensurate glances. The occasional nod or wave are the only things thrown our way. A few blades of grass, the only things forcing between our interlocked fingers. If blonde girl from my Wednesday morning class were to walk by, she likely wouldn't even do a double take. She would recognize the humanity and compassion, not view us as an embodiment of a sexually perverse abstraction. It is ironic, for though my college is supposed to prepare me for the real world, on its campus we exist in a bubble. Apathy has worked as a stopgap. It has afforded a modicum of normalcy and happiness, a level of accepted existence that 40 years earlier seemed an impossibility. But the vitriolic energy it also fosters has overshadowed and consumed apathies. Cole's visit soon ended, the real world and all its plagues soon returned. We did not hold hands as I walked Cole to the train station. Though we could be fairly certain of the nonviolent apathy within the confines of campus, the same apathy that created the collegiate bubble also breeds hate and is helpless to defend against it. Outside the bubble, hate has forced itself into everyday life. Today it seems everyone hates something, whether traffic tickets, broccoli, or afternoon tests. Thus, blonde girl and every other unknown becomes a potential danger. A new coalescence of energy, one that encourages and celebrates differences and brings life to abstraction, is needed to combat the cultural preoccupation with hate. Perhaps then we can start to work towards healing the divisions that rent us apart. Perhaps then we can revive the voices of Jefferson, Lincoln, and King. For though they may be hushed, they are not silent, they are not defeated. Such a healing will not bring back Matthew Shepard. It will have no effect on the latest boys to succumb to their persecutors. But it can save the next lonely, confused child, promising that it gets better. It can spread the safety of the sunlit Northwest DC, the peace under the college beach, from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire to every hill and molehill of Mississippi. A true understanding of hatred as irrational and destructive will create a world where the best vantage point in the theater actually offers the best view of the screen, where the darkness of night encourages all couples to hold hands, and where the obvious answer to whom I'm visiting this weekend is my boyfriend. Thank you.